Hey guys, welcome back to another impressions video, this time around for Asura's Wrath for the PlayStation 3. This was the last game I beat in 2015, even though this game has been already out for many years, but I was finally able to get around and sit down and play this game and beat it, and I'm really glad I did. This is one very unique experience that should be played by you guys if you're interested in this type of unique, weird type of experience. And the uniqueness of this game comes from a combination of a unique story, the way the story is narrated, and the variety in terms of the gameplay mechanics that the game has to offer. So a lot of different things combined to make this a very unique title that this is exactly what I look sometimes when I play video games. Instead of doing the typical cookie cutter, genre, playing a first-person shooter that sticks to the rules, or an action game that sticks to the rule, we have things like Asura's Wrath that have something different and in a quirky, odd type of way that I really personally like. So that's a huge positive of the game, in my opinion. Now, before I start talking about the game, let's just get the negative out of the way. This is a game that in order to watch the true ending, you have to buy the DLC extra episodes, which is a pretty crappy business practice by Capcom, the publisher, if you ask me, because you have to pay $7 basically to play that final episode and see the true ending. And trust me, guys, it's very important that you play that extra episode, because even though you can finish this game, it has somewhat of a quote-unquote good ending. You really want to watch that final ending in order to get a full understanding of the universe and the story surrounding Asura's Wrath. So a pretty crappy business practice by Capcom, but I had to do it. I didn't feel as bad doing it, because since I bought this game a couple years ago after the game got released for some time, I got this for very cheap, like around $12 to $13. I bought it through GameFly. So $12, $13 plus $7 of DLC content, that puts me around $20, which is perfectly fine and a very good price for the experience that I had with this game. But on the other hand, I guess you can say that, in one hand, I ended up supporting that bad practice of buying an extra or a true ending DLC, if you will. But luckily, I don't think there are many games out there that are doing this type of things, which is pretty good. Right now, at the moment, I can't think of any other game that does that. But let's just concentrate on Asura's Wrath. Story-wise, I'm not going to spoil anything, but the story is definitely one of the strongest points in the game. It has a very unique world and universe. Basically, the world in the game is called Gaia, which is inhabited by humans, and there's this constant threat by this race, like a monster race called the Goma, and the Goma are trying to destroy Gaia basically. And you stepped into the role of Asura, which is one of eight generals that lead this very high-tech army of warships that have very strong weapons, and they're constantly battling with the Goma. And the 8 generals, like Asura and his friends or co-workers or whatever you want to call them, they all have this supernatural strength and powers that they can use their bodies to just basically destroy enemies with their physical strength, and they have all sorts of very powerful moves that they can unleash on the Goma. And that's exactly what happens very early in the game. You as Asura, you manage to defeat one of the main, I guess, villains early in the game, which is I think it's called Viltra. And by doing that, you're summoned basically by the top general, by the top general, and then you find out that he gets murdered, and you basically get framed. You're being blamed for something that you did not do. You get framed, and your daughter gets kidnapped. And on top of that, because you get betrayed by the other generals in the game, they actually kill you, and you go into this limbo, I guess, state that basically Asura is trapped there for like 12,000 years, something crazy like that. And when you finally manage to escape this limbo, I guess, world or a stage, you're back into Gaia just to find out that the Goma are still a threat to humanity, and that the 7 generals are still up there trying to defeat the Goma, but they're basically using your daughter as a means to gather mana and power in order to defeat the Goma. And of course, Asura is not cool with that. He's not cool with the fact that he got betrayed and framed, and he's not cool with the fact that his daughter got kidnapped. So he is a Asura, as you can see here on the cover. He looks like a angry version of Akuma from Street Fighter, and let me just tell you that he is a very, very angry dude, and the way his personality is portrayed in the game is just fantastic, because he's always angry, full of revenge, full of just violent thoughts of getting revenge and getting his daughter back and just destroying the other people that have betrayed you. And man, this guy, I'm telling you, he's the angriest he's the angriest video game character that I've ever controlled in any video game, and he needs to get his blood pressure checked, I'm telling you, because this guy is just very, very angry. But in terms of gameplay, this is another unique aspect of the game. Or before I jump into the gameplay, I want to finish by saying that the story in this game is narrated through almost like an episodic type of manner, in which before each episode you have you reminisce about what happened in the previous chapter, almost like a TV or like an anime show. You see in the previous chapter so and so happened, and this is what's going to happen in the next episode, things like that. You get like small trailers before and after each chapter that kind of they remind you of what's going on in the story, which it gives the game like a episodic cartoon or anime or TV show type of vibe that I thought it was pretty cool and unique. Now, as far as the gameplay, it's really hard to describe the gameplay in this game. It's broken down into several different sections. For the most part, this game is a beat 'em up. You're gonna find yourself using Asura and defeating enemies, typical beat 'em up type of way, developing combos. You can fill your special move gauge, and you can do your burst attacks, which are like cinematic moves that the more enemies you defeat, the more your burst gauge gets filled, and then you can pull off all these super powerful moves. And so that's the beat 'em up section, which in my opinion, I think it's most of the gameplay mechanics of the game. There are also like rail sections where it's similar to like Star Fox or the Panzer Dragoon games, where Asura is flying around and you have a target on the screen, and you can shoot towards different types of enemies. And this is all fixed or rail based, if you will. So that's another type of gameplay aspect of the game. And then of course you have your cinematic or adventure type of sequences, which are all based in quick time events. This game has a lot of, I guess, similar to the Telltale games, where you're just basically watching a movie and you have to respond by doing quick time event input commands. So that's another part of the gameplay. So it's almost like an episodic adventure Telltale type of game with beat 'em up segments and on rails shooting segments as well. So a very varied gameplay throughout the game that helps keeps things fresh. But for the most part, I thought they did a pretty good job of combining all three. And one of the things that I personally don't like about QuickTime events is that sometimes they take away from you. Sometimes you want to be enjoying the cinematic sequences, watching what happens, but in this game, knowing that anything can happen, you're always just looking at the center of the screen in order to see if some kind of command prompt is going to appear, which it's something that I dislike personally about QuickTime events in general. In the God of War games, the bosses are like that. In Puppeteer, the bosses were like that as well, and you always have to you're always centering your attention to the center of the screen where the commands are going to prompt, and you're not necessarily paying attention to the movie or the cinematic sequence that it's happening. But it's the nature of the game. But that's a minor irk that I have with this game, being a QuickTime event thing. And the game is not very long. It took me about, I would say, 7 hours to beat the game. And then you have to, well, it's optional, but I highly recommend it that you download the episodic DLC, the extra episode with the DLC, and that's also a pretty short experience. So overall, you're looking between 7 to 10 hours. The game does have different difficulty levels. I played this on normal, and you know, depending on how good or bad you do in the QuickTime events, you may have to repeat certain portions of the game. But for the most part, the checkpoints are pretty well placed in the game. So if you fail something, you can repeat that. But if you're planning on getting the platinum trophy for this game, you do have to be very careful, because all of your QuickTime events have to happen almost perfectly, which is pretty rough and pretty tough. You may have to restart entire chapters in order to get an S rank. So kudos to those of you that decide to go for a platinum in this game, because it requires a lot of patience and a lot of memorizing when things are gonna happen and what to do and things like that. So not the type of platinum trophy that I will dedicate my time and efforts to. But as far as the overall experience, you know, the voice acting was pretty, the sound in general was pretty good. Very good soundtrack. The voice acting was pretty well done. You know, Asura being an angry guy, he sounded like an angry guy throughout the game. And I thought the script and the voice acting was pretty good for the majority of the game. And once again, it was the settings, the environment, the characters. You know, when you have to take revenge on all these generals that previously were your companions, then they betray you. They all have their own unique personality. They all have their unique fighting styles, and I thought it was a very very interesting. It reminded me of the Grasshopper Suda 51 games like No More Heroes, where the bosses have a very unique personality, and they're just fun to fight against because they're so unique. And this game does that in a very beautiful way. And just the overall scenery, the overall themes of the game, the threat of the Goma attacking Earth, and how you're being betrayed, and you constant seek of revenge. It's something that it kept me playing the game all the way to the end, and eventually into buying the DLC. So Asura's Wrath, I highly recommend this game, guys. You can probably get this for dirt cheap nowadays. It's an older game. I think it was released in 2009, 2010 maybe. So you can get the game for cheap, and I want to say don't feel bad for purchasing the DLC. It's only like $7. So if you can get the game for cheap and then pay $7 on top, I don't think not a whole damage is done to your wallet, but depends on your principles as well. By buying the DLC, you're kind of supporting the idea of having, you know, endings being sold through DLC. So it's up to you guys, but if you guys own the game, definitely give this a go. I thought it was a very unique experience, a very Japanese developer type of game, in the sense that it's quirky, it's interesting. The story is kind of cheesy at some points, but for the most part, it tries to be very serious. So Asura's Wrath, a very unique experience, highly recommended for the PlayStation 3 or the 360. So thank you guys for watching this video, and I will see you all later. Take it easy.